Hi everyone, my name is Stavros and welcome back to my channel. Today I want to talk a little bit about trading card games. I've loved trading card games ever since I was a kid. I often jumped around to different card games. I tried a bunch of different ones out, but I had a couple of staples that I really gravitated towards and loved, and I'll talk a bit about those today. I just want to talk a bit about my experience with them growing up. I've recently gotten back into trading card games as an adult, and I want to talk a bit about that experience and what it's been like getting back into it as an adult, and just talk a little bit about all that kind of experience in general, kind of how it feels now compared to how it felt then. I'll definitely say that as an adult, with my 28-year-old eyes, I see things a little bit differently than I did through my 10-year-old eyes. So I want to talk a bit about that and what I've been kind of thinking about in my head as the TCG Paradox. So let's move over to my card game corner and let's talk about it. So growing up, I really had two main loves when it came to TCGs. The first was Yu-Gi-Oh! I loved Yu-Gi-Oh! I wanted to play Yu-Gi-Oh! All the time. I would bring cards with me to daycare and I would play with people at daycare before school. I would bring cards to school to play at recess and trade during recess. And a bunch of kids on my street all played Yu-Gi-Oh! And we'd always get together, play Yu-Gi-Oh! Together all the time. We just wanted to play it all the time. When I was growing up, I didn't really get an allowance for doing things around the house. You were just expected to help out around the house. But whenever I would, help with yard work or take out the garbage and stuff like that, my parents would sometimes, as a little bit of a reward, as a thank you for helping them out, they would get me a booster pack or two from the store. And I still remember that feeling of sitting in the backyard, sweaty because you've been out all day doing yard work, with one or two booster packs, opening them just thinking, oh my god, what am I going to get? That feeling, that euphoria, anytime I open a booster pack to this day, that's what kind of I get invigorated with. And so I absolutely love Yu-Gi-Oh! Was my first introduction to trading card games, and for that it'll always hold a special place in my heart. I also played some Pokemon. Pokemon was never really something I actively collected. I enjoyed it. I thought the art was cute. I loved playing the Pokemon video game, and so that was something that I really enjoyed playing. And so the cards were nice to kind of tag along with that. But as a kid, I never understood how to play Pokemon. I thought it was way too complex for me. As an adult now, I do get it. But as a kid, whenever we would battle with our Pokemon cards, it would often just be which Pokemon has the higher HP, and that Pokemon would win. Or my Pokemon looks cooler than your Pokemon, so my Pokemon wins. And so it was never really something that I actively got into all that much. Now, although I loved Yu-Gi-Oh! And dabbled a bit in Pokemon, my main love, and it was love at first sight, was a card game named Chaotic. Whenever I talk to people about Chaotic these days, they either knew about it and loved the game, or have absolutely no knowledge of this game ever even existing. Chaotic was based off of a Danish card game that was brought into North America by a person named Brian Gannon, and he was helped distributed by 4Kids Entertainment. 4Kids Entertainment also created a TV show for the card game, which I feel is how these things go. Pokemon has a TV show, Yu-Gi-Oh! Has a TV show, Digimon has a TV show. All these things have TV shows, or at least used to help kind of market the game so that people would see the TV show and then want to get the cards for the game. The game lasted about 3 years and was ultimately taken out of print around 2010 because 4Kids Entertainment went under and there was a lengthy legal battle that took place. That was ultimately resolved in around 2018, and Brian Gannon re-got the rights to the game, and he's currently in the process of trying to bring the game back into existence, which I really, really hope happens because I absolutely loved Chaotic. Everything about this game I just felt was speaking to me. There were battle gear, there were creatures, there were spells, you would fight and how you would strategize, where you would put your characters. It was just such an incredibly fun game. I absolutely loved it. As a kid, I didn't know about any of this legal battle that was going on. All of a sudden, this card game just didn't exist anymore. But when it did exist, I loved it. It introduced me to the main aspect of trading cards. I traded a little bit during playing Yu-Gi-Oh! And playing Pokemon, but in Chaotic, there were 4 factions, primarily in Chaotic. Eventually a 5th got introduced, but there were 4 factions in Chaotic. I was a big Danians player, and my good friend was a really good Mepenians player. So, whenever he had Danian cards that he didn't want, and I had Mepenian cards that I didn't want, we would trade each other for them. And so it was a really fun way of trading cards, getting cards that one another wanted, and we really, really loved that aspect of the game. Eventually, when it died though, and all of a sudden, for me as a kid, Chaotic cards were just not seen on the shelves anymore, I slowly started to taper out of trading card games. Probably about a good 3-4 years, I just didn't play any card games until around 2013. Around the end of high school, I started playing Magic a little bit. It was super clear to me that Magic had a much deeper fan base, a much more established fan base. And I liked the game and I played for a couple of years, but ultimately it wasn't the kind of game that I was looking for. It wasn't as whimsical, as chaotic. I just wasn't enjoying it as much as I wanted to, and I thought that might be it for me for trading card games. I didn't play for a long, long time until a couple years ago when they announced Disney's Lorcana. And my ears prickled up a little bit, and I said, okay, maybe it's time to start dabbling again. Before we jump straight into Lorcana, I want to talk a little bit about my interim between trading card games and what I was doing in between then. As you can probably tell, if you look at my background in most of my videos, you can see I got into board games. I love board games. I play a bunch of different board games. And I would still gravitate towards a lot of card-based board games, games like Dominion, games like Summoner Wars, things like that. And I think this is vitally important for when I get to the trading card game Paradox in just a little bit here, because what was different about these games is that all the cards that you could possibly get in the game were all within one box. And I think that's a vital note that I'll touch on in a little bit, but got really into board games and I was really enjoying that aspect of gaming and games. When they announced Disney's Lorcana, as a huge Disney fan and a huge trading card games fan, I thought, okay, this is going to be a great way to try and recapture that magic that I felt as a kid. And I truly believe that that magic is here with this card game. Lorcana is an awesome and fun and whimsical game. It truly captured that feeling of being a kid again. The joy and excitement of opening booster packs was still there, just like it was with Yu-Gi-Oh! And with Chaotic. Taking the time to sit down and strategize and build the best deck that you can possibly build. All that energy and excitement was still there. But as an adult, I was starting to see that things were not always exactly the same as they were when I was a kid. See, when I was a kid, me and my friends that were all around, we all had relatively the same resources, and so when we were buying cards and the cards that we had, we all had relatively the same access to different aspects of different cards. As an adult now, I see that cards are expensive. As a kid, I wasn't the one paying for the cards, and so maybe I didn't notice it quite as much. And it's not quite that individual booster packs are, super expensive. In and of themselves, they're not crazy. Where it starts to become excessive, or very expensive in my opinion, is when you start looking at buying individual cards, which as a kid, I didn't even know you could do. As an adult, I see that that is a huge aspect of maintaining your competitive nature in a trading card game. And so as an adult, I've realized that a big aspect of being competitive is not necessarily just how skilled are you, but rather also how much have you been able/willing to spend on the cards that you have in your deck. Whether that's through booster packs, whether that's through buying cards individually, there's a lot of, do you have the best possible cards you could possibly have in order to be competitive? And that wasn't quite there in the same way when I was a kid, because we all had the same resources, we'd buy booster packs, and we'd play with the cards that we had. And we weren't necessarily off looking at which card was in the meta to be the best deck that we could possibly be. When I got into Lorcana, I got into it hard. I basically took all the disposable income that I had that I didn't have when I was a kid and said, I'm getting into this, I'm going to buy a bunch of booster packs and really dive straight in. This whole box that you see behind me is pretty much packed with Lorcana cards, as are these binders behind me. And yet, I'm still only a casual collector and a casual competitive player. And a big part of that is because I've not spent hundreds of dollars on some of these really powerful cards that I'm talking about, and these cards that are more difficult to get because there wasn't as many printing of them and all these kinds of things. And so as I grow into the hobby, I've started to realize that buying booster packs, although it gives me that same rush that I had as a kid, is maybe not the most economic way to be pursuing this hobby. I mean, effectively, booster packs are just a legal way to allow kids to gamble, right? They buy a booster pack and they open it. The problem is, most of the time, it is very hard to feel satisfied opening just one booster pack. So notably, you buy 2 or 3 or 4, and now you spent a bunch of money on a bunch of cards, when the reality is that most of those cards are probably cards that you're never going to use and don't really want all that much. You might get a couple of cards that you might want to use and might be valuable, but often those cards you could have bought individually and would have costed you a fraction as much as what you spent on the booster pack. And on the rare occasion where you do get one of those really good super rare cards that I'm talking about, you feel like you've won, you get this huge dopamine hit, and it proves to you and re-enables to yourself why you should buy booster packs again in the future. It's a lot like what they do with casinos, right? Slot machines and stuff like that. And so it's effectively a legal way to allow kids to do some small gambling and get those small hits of dopamine. And I don't want you to take it the wrong way. I still love opening booster packs. I will always love opening booster packs. I will never not be opening them. But I've just started to realize that economically speaking, it's not the most efficient way to be pursuing the hobby. And that if I want to be more efficient in terms of the money that I'm spending, it might be better spent buying individual cards as opposed to buying booster packs. I'm still going to buy some, but it's just one of those things where I'm just starting to realize the the intricacies of pursuing this hobby as an adult and trying to be a bit more competitive in the game. I also think that what doesn't help is that now I have access to all this different knowledge that might have been available when I was a kid, but I just didn't know where to look or how to look for it. You effectively will know every card that's in a set before the set is even released now. You'll know which ones are the best ones and the ones you really want to get, which ones suck and you don't really care for. But because of that, because you have all this knowledge already, when I open a booster pack, I don't always feel that same rush of excitement that I did when I was a kid. When I was a kid and I didn't have all this knowledge, almost inevitably, every time I would open a booster pack, there would be at least a couple cards that I'd never seen before. And so I'd get to read these cards and see what they were for the first time, and it was just so exciting. Whereas now, when I open a booster pack, it's almost methodical. You know what cards are, what each card does, and you're just flipping through them. And there's still that joy and that rush of what's going to be at the end, what's going to be the rare cards that I potentially get. But it does take away a little bit of that magic for me. So, finally, what is the trading card game paradox? I believe that the TCG Paradox is that although it's a trading card game, it's not really meant for trading. Inevitably, some small trading still happens, but as an adult, it's far and few between. It really becomes much more of a pay-to-win card game and a pay-to-play card game, where in order to get the best cards and have the best decks, you're inevitably going to be spending more and more money, whether on booster packs or on buying individual cards. And if you want to stay competitive, you basically have to do that. You're almost forced to. In some small cases, if you're just playing for fun with a small group of friends, it doesn't lead to this, but almost inevitably, if you really dive deep into a trading card game, you're going to start to realize that economically it doesn't make as much sense to buy booster packs. You're going to start to slowly drift into buying a couple of booster packs a set, and maybe then buying more singles for the specific cards you need for the specific decks you want to build. And so effectively, rather than becoming and being a trading card game, it becomes a pay-to-play card game. Now, despite all that sounding a little bit negative, I really do not want you to be discouraged about picking up a trading card game as a hobby. I have loved picking up Lorcana as an adult and getting to play a lot more. I dearly, dearly hope that Chaotic does come back someday and I get to enjoy that as an adult with disposable income. I'm also super excited for the new League of Legends card game Riftbound coming out, and I've already pre-ordered that game and that game's coming out in October. You can make really great friends in these communities, both online and in person, and I've made really great friends playing these games at my local card stores. So I really don't want you to think that it's negative. I just think that for me, it's important to know about the paradox beforehand. It's something that I really wish I'd known about a bit more beforehand, because like I said, when I jumped into the game, I really dived in head first, and I spent a lot of money on what would ultimately end up being not super competitive cards, because I bought a whole bunch of booster packs, and I didn't always get the best cards in them. So it's just something that I think that it's important to know about before you jump into the trading card game hobbies. But if you like trading card games or are interested in trading card games, I absolutely recommend that you do try one out. And with all that said, how am I going to be moving forward with my trading card game hobbies, now that I feel like I've seen the Matrix and I know about the trading card game paradox? Really, for me, I'm just going to be trying to be more intentional about how I'm spending my money. I'll still buy a couple booster packs to get that dopamine hit and enjoyment, but I'll be trying to focus a bit more on buying singles and buying specifically the cards that I want to buy and that I need to buy for the decks that I want to play. I'm also going to be trying to trade a bit more with my local card game communities. It doesn't happen as much as when you were kids, but it's still there. It's still prevalent a little bit. And just again, try and be more intentional about what I'm looking for and how I'm trying to do that. I'm also going to try and keep the magic alive a little bit like I was when I was a kid, and try and steer clear of some spoilers when a new set's coming out, so that when I'm opening booster packs, I can try and get that mystique and that excitement about finding a new card for the first time when I'm looking at it in the pack after I've opened it. So, with all that being said, I want to know what you think about the trading card game paradox. Do you believe that it exists? Have you experienced it before? Let's have a conversation about it in the comments below. And until next time.